Today we are going to discuss about as we discussed earlier in our Auzubillahi minash shaitanir Rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we are going to look at the beginning of the colonialism in South Asia through East India Company and how they got hold of the economy. So because we are nowadays living in a kind of new colonialism, society where everything is being accepted even without, doing any question on that, and without asking where it is going to take us in future or something like that. So in other words, if I try to put it in a simple word, in my own word, I would say like it's the kind of system of oppression in terms of economic and other norms, we can say, which is going to ruin our life in maybe near future or even still ruining it, and we are still unaware of that thing as well. And we are, because we are neglect and we are not understanding this issue in, you can say, uh, in our, because of lack of knowledge and understanding on these issues, and we never even talk about these issues, that how colonialism is going to affect our future and present, how is it affecting, and how it affected us in past. So I would like to request Sister Rebecca, Assalamu alaikum, and I would welcome you on the Zoom meeting as well. And thank you so much for your time that you took out for us. And I would like to know, what is colonialism? If we just want to know what is colonialism in terms of definition, and how do you see the colonialism of East India Company, or through East India Company in a subcontinent? So I would like you to start from that, I guess.
Thank you, sister, for the invitation, and thank you to everyone who may be online. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. One of the reasons, I guess we could say, why we are talking about this is that exactly as you say, sister, I have taught Muslim students for the last 20 years, and I have found that they don't know what colonialism is. They're not familiar with the word. And so what I have realized is that Muslim majority countries that were occupied by Western countries, such as France and Britain and Germany, for a long time, these countries were ruled by Britain, France, and Germany, and their society was changed forever. And a lot of the reasons why Muslims have ended up living and being raised in Western countries is because of this long history of the occupation of Western countries in Muslim majority countries, and how the Western countries helped to weaken the economies of those Muslim majority countries. And it's not just the Western countries that did that, it was the elites of the Muslim majority countries that also allowed this to happen. So, and this is still continuing, this is still going on. So we have the elites of Europe working together, or kind of working with the elites of, say, North Africa. We have countries like Algeria, Morocco, and Egypt that also went through the same thing, Turkey as well. And of course, India was the most famous one, because young people may have forgotten that Queen Victoria became Empress of India, which might sound really incredible today, that, it would be like today's Queen, being declared as Empress of India, which today would just sound really strange. But that's how the situation ended up at the end of the 19th century. And this process started in the 16th century, maybe a little bit earlier than that. And so, first of all, colonialism is to colonize another land means to take over that other land and to settle in that other land and kind of impose your own culture in that land and your own system. And so this happened in different ways, and the world ended up with what was called the British Empire. My grandmother is still alive at the age of 102, alhamdulillah, and she has told me that back when she was younger, in the 1930s and 1940s, she said it was all about the empire. It was everything was about British Empire, the greatness of the British Empire, and this ideology was inculcated in school children. It was, school children were raised to be proud of being part of the British Empire. This is the reason why we have people from the Caribbean who ended up to Britain, because although Caribbean people's ancestors had been taken from Africa and enslaved by the British and used as slaves in America and the Caribbean to enrich Britain through the production of sugar and cotton, still we find that, for example, people in the Caribbean viewed Britain as the mother country. Britain used to be called the mother country. And after the Second World War, when Britain needed to rebuild its economy, it invited people from the Caribbean over to Britain to take on fairly menial positions, working on the buses and on the public transport, to help to rebuild the economy. And this is what Britain also did with India and what became Pakistan as well. People from India and Pakistan were invited over to Britain, and they may have even have been part of the Indian and Pakistani elite, the upper classes. But once they got to Britain, then they lost that status to an extent, and they ended up working for the British civil services. So they ended up working for NHS, prison system, the import-export system, and so even though they might have considered themselves to some extent to be Muslim, on the other hand, they were in practice, they were still working for the British economy, and they still are today. They are still servants of the crown, servants of the British economy. And so this started whereby what was initially called the English East India Company. So inshallah, maybe we can have a few kind of classes on this. But to give an initial history about that, we can see that according to one scholar, the East India Company was started in 1600. So that is now, over 400 years ago, 500 years ago, the East India Company was established. Yeah. Do you want to ask any question, or?
I just want to ask something, like why the elites were so, like, even now when we see our countries and everything, why people don't understand this thing and they are still supporting these systems and still happy to be in them. So what was that reason, or that the British Empire instilled while being in these areas, that we are still under that mental slavery, you can say, and physical, and you can say practically we are in slavery. So why they couldn't understand this, and why they didn't take any step, or even the people, common people, why they didn't understand that this is something our elite is doing, and we are in a constant slavery from, like, you can say, from last 400-500. Even now when we do something for these companies which are multinational or something, we are very happy and very proud on that, but we don't create our own resources for our own selves and our own nation. So how would you respond to that, and what are the reasons behind this?
Yes, inshallah. And then I can see the brother also wants to make a point as well.
Yes.
I've studied quite a lot over the last few years about a totally different subject, but I have studied about narcissistic abuse.
Mm,
So what happens with narcissistic abuse in a family, say, is you can have a grandmother who is abusive, or a mother who is abusive, or a father who is abusive. Any abusive family member, what they do is they gain dominance over the
mm,
family unit, or you can have a boss in the office who will gain dominance in their environment by manipulating and bullying and abusing other members of other people around them. And instead of those people taking a stand against the abuser, what they do instead is to try to take the side of the abuser. They will defend the abuser because even though they see this person as being abusive, they still see them as being dominant. And then the human psyche is that people want to be with what they see is superior. Whoever they see is superior. I was talking to a sister. In fact, I can recommend her for some discussions. She's from Comoros, which is islands in East Africa, and she said that people from, as an example, from the Comoros, because the Comoros were French, and they speak French, and so many people from there have ended up in France, and men from the Comoros will marry a French woman because they see that step up. But this is because, not because they think, oh, she's more beautiful or whatever, but in the human psyche, as this sister rightly said, it's almost like you have been conditioned to think that for your survival, you need to attach yourself to whoever is dominant and whoever is superior. You might not like the person, and another thing is that you may be afraid of being on the receiving end of their abuse as well. So there's a lot of human psychology involved in that, and today people are still on the receiving end of propaganda. We see how, in the media, people still are deceived by what they see, in terms of Western programming. A bit like how we were in England in the 70s, when we used to see all these TV shows coming out of America. I was raised on American, kind of TV shows, and you think that that's how America is. You have no idea of the poverty and the struggles of ordinary everyday Americans. You just think it's this kind of glamorous country and it's the place to go to. So there's still a lot of propaganda going on. So yes, the brother wanted to
I
say
was
something.
trying to unmute it, but I don't know where should I go to unmute it. So I did.
So can I ask now?
Yeah, you can ask
Yes.
now. We can hear you.
Okay.
Assalamu
Actually, I
alaikum.
was listening. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Muhammad Kamran Nawaz.
Nice. To meet you.
Actually, I was listening to the speaker. She was telling about the colonialism.
Yeah.
Colonialism. Sorry. So in this case, they want to transfer.
Brother, you've gone on mute again.
Yeah, I guess so. If you can repeat, just 1 minute. I don't know why it's getting unmuted. I don't know, it's
Sorry.
automatically happening something. I'm not doing anything.
Sorry. So in this one, like like the British Empire tried to they influence their culture into the country, like in the Pakistan and India. But if we see in the reality, they did not they try to install their culture in India and Pakistan, or you can see the history of the France in Algeria. They try to suppress them, and they try to make their culture more bad, you can say, or they try to ruin their history, or they try to ruin their the character. So in colonialism, I think this is the basic objective. They want to do it.
Yeah.
How?
Yes, thank you. And
Yeah,
yes, sister.
yeah. Go on.
Yes, I mean, the reason why I'm talking about this is that it took me a while to wake up to history myself.
Mm.
So, I mean, I went to school in Britain, and we weren't told anything about this.
Mm.
And I know that some politicians nowadays, they've said that children in school need to be taught about colonialism.
Mm.
We weren't told anything, and it wasn't until I came to London when I was 18 to study, and I started to meet people in London from countries that had been colonized, that I started to realize what had gone on. And there's actually what I noticed was that the elites of, say, Britain have used their young people to promote the colonial project. So British youth have also been brainwashed. They don't realize what's going on. It's like in the British schools now, all they are taught about for history is about the First and Second World Wars.
Yeah.
For their GCSE. And I'm thinking, why is there this obsession with the First and Second World War? And they haven't really caught up with the fact that, half of the students in Britain now are going to be from countries that were colonized by Britain. So why are those students having to memorize all these facts about the First and Second World War? Like, why is this almost like the only thing that's taught about British history? And so actually, as a friend of mine said, when she was raising her sons in Spain, I mean, she was from here, but she was raising her sons in Spain. And then she brought them back to Britain. She said, I don't want them to go to the local schools because they're just being trained, mentally trained, to be servants of empire. And so this programming is still going on. And I think, when I go online, for example, in the morning I go online and I see like the main news items, there's always something about the British royal family. They do a lot of PR, they do a lot of self-promotion. And they've managed to kind of maintain their glamour and everything. So and like I say, there's been so many Muslim youth who are going to school here in Britain, but they don't fit into the mainstream English culture. They don't fit into that. And so they're kind of floating around, they're floating around in this no man's land, not quite sure of who they are, and with no idea of exactly why they are here and what they should be doing. Their only objective is, is to be told to get a good job and to try to become as British as possible. But they're not told, well, actually, the very country that you were in, that occupied your grandparents and your great grandparents' land, and as brother said, worked to undermine the culture and the sense of dignity and the history and the educational tradition of that land.
Mm.
So
So,
it's
Sister
about
Rebecca,
going,
I want to ask you, like you
yeah,
mentioned earlier in your discussion, like they are not teaching them the colonialism, like the history of colonialism in their
yeah,
schools. So why is that happening? Like, and why are, as you said in your conversation, that there are certain politicians, they also want them like colonialism history into their curriculum as well, but they are that is not still in the subject of history, added in the history. So why is that happening, and why our people, for example, Muslim youth, no matter which race they are coming from, even they are Indian, Pakistani, or whichever country they are from, so why they are not so much, I mean, asleep, that they can't even see that they are just producing servants and the servants and the servants of those empires which already have taken all their resources from their lands, and still they think that they are super or superior or something like that, and our nations are still in kind of inferior complex, if we say, and that's
yeah,
how they are playing through the media and the psyche. They are like developing our people psyche through the media as well. So how would you say that, like what steps our people should be taking on that, and how we can awake them from this kind of sleep which is from like past, you can say, 6 7 centuries is ongoing, and they're still not awake, and they think just eating and sleeping and waking up and marrying, getting married is enough, and these are the basic objectives of the life, and we have to just do these things and have to become a professional, and that's it. So how would you
yeah.
say that, how we can awake them in that, from that sleep?
I think that our Islamic centers and our Husseinias must run courses on this, because it's not being taught at school. And very often, even the parents and grandparents don't exactly know what was happening. Very quickly, the history can be forgotten.
Mm,
I think that also with the trauma of occupation and colonization, is that sometimes previous generations, it's too painful for them to talk about. This is what I found with when people talk about partition. A lot of the youth say that they never knew that what their grandparents or great grandparents have been through, because they never spoke about it.
mm,
And some of my family were, on my mother's side, Irish, and of course Ireland has, like I said, recently, Ireland has a long history of having been occupied by the English, and yet it's a painful subject for Irish people to talk about a lot of the time. They want to move forward. They want to look to the future, and they've kind of become fatigued and tired by this constant conflict that's gone on in their lives. So they want to kind of like a positive, fresh start. But what they don't realize is that they're still operating within the parameters of an economy that is dominated by countries like Britain and Germany, that has a specific agenda. I mean, now we look at Ireland's as a nation and a country, it's lost a lot of its spiritual heritage, the same as what has happened in Muslim countries. So these subjects are not being taught about. They're not being, the youth are not being taught at home or at school. And so for practical steps, we need to set up courses in the Islamic centers and the Husseinias, and help the youth to understand this history, because this history is what has shaped the world today and is continuing to shape the world. If you look, I mean, I think there was a recently a poll done among people in Britain about whether they think that colonialism was a good thing, like occupying other people's lands was a good thing. I think something like 57% of people who responded to the poll said it was a good thing. So there's still a debate about it. I mean, recently we had in the UK, there was a incident of a statue of someone who had enriched himself through the slave trade, and that was knocked over by some people off its stand. And these people, because they were so angry with this this personality that made a lot of money out of the slave trade, these young people were taken to court over this in the UK. So it's still a very sensitive, touchy subject. And people from ex-colonized countries are still being brainwashed. They're still being used. Britain still has its strategies. If you notice, I mean, there are now in Britain many so-called Muslim MPs. No female Muslim MP wears hijab, by the way. But we have a range of so-called Muslim MPs who are there just to repeat the line of the British government. And this is how Britain managed to gain influence in Muslim lands. It wasn't just through, say, force or guns or so on and so forth, but it was also through persuasion, a bit like Muawiyah did with the,
it's more like a function,
exactly.
You can say. These are the functional values they teach in the institutions like schools, colleges, and universities, and they just fit in their departments, or you can say wherever they needed them. And we just think like, oh, we are getting good money and we are at this higher place and this and that. But no one is there to challenge the system, which is oppressive in terms of like the resources of other countries. Whether it is like kind of intellectual resources, whether they are economic resources, whether they are like you can say there are so many other resources like mines, oil and things like that. So they are using them. So how we can come out of like from this kind of like a street which is closed from one side, and everyone is trapped in there, and they are thinking that they are free and they are enjoying good life and they are having wonderful life, no one can even imagine. So how we can break this trap, and how do you think that even in Muslim countries or among the Muslim communities, in different types of communities we have here, so do they think about it like colonialism as a big issue, like a root cause of all our problems among the Muslim ummah, you can say, if you say so? Do you think they are talking about it anywhere, even a little? The way you said they had a poll in here in UK and 57% said yes, it is good thing, but how about the Muslim? Did they have any polls in their centers or anywhere, discussion on that point or something like that? Did you see?
I don't think it is being discussed. I don't think it is being discussed, and I see the same practices continuing as in terms of what England was doing with the East India Company, and how this was initially set up as a trading company, and it was given a kind of a stamp of approval by Elizabeth I. So it goes all the way back, hundreds of years, and it started to trade with the India and China, and eventually, like we said the other day, it eventually offered to, this is what Britain has done, offered to help the local landowners to collect their taxes more efficiently. So colonialism is done through force, but it's through helping, providing your services. And we see this happening, for example, like in Iraq today, where I don't know if this is still happening now, but not long ago, it came to light that the Karbala municipality had given the contract for building Karbala airport to a French company. And that French company was going to be able to collect all the data and information of everybody who was coming in and out of the airport. So what we need to do is we need to have regular discussions on this. I mean, we actually should also really petition our local Husainias. We should raise awareness among parents that it's very important for their children to know about this, and so that the parents can then go to the local centers and say that our children must be taught about this, because this is a key part of our identity today and who we are. And we can only start to really try to liberate ourselves from the economic system. And nowadays, I think it's too late, to be honest, to liberate ourselves from the economic system. But at least we can have some kind of awareness about the system that we are in. And we can only do that if we start to help people to become aware. So we need to have awareness campaigns, as an example, and to help young people to understand how they have been brainwashed, or how a big part of themselves is just being ignored at school. Like all the children having to learn about First and Second World War. Well, what about, you know, your own grandparents and great grandparents' history? And I know personally how quickly history can be forgotten. If it's not talked about by one or two generations, then all the details are going to be forgotten. And then that's it. We're floating around. We don't know who we are. And we just focus on, you know, our material goals.
So I want to know something more, like how, for those people who think, for example, that colonialism is really good because it, for example, gave us the financial, for example, strength to, for example, their life, or economically they have got good businesses because, for example, foreign countries have come to their countries and they have, you know, big factories and things like that. So how would you like explain the damages of this colonialism and how it has impacted on the, you know, you can say in subcontinent, what damages it has given to in subcontinent, and how it is bad thing, or it's a wrong thing, or it's the system is oppressive and system is supporting just elites and not the common people. How would you explain that to those people who just think this is the right thing and good thing and it is very supportive to them? And minded, we have just, I think so, 7 to 8 minutes, I guess, so
Yeah.
we need to wrap it up as well. So just I would like to know all this.
Yeah. Recently, a report came out on how much the British Empire managed to extract from subcontinent, so-called subcontinent, something like $417 billion, the equivalent. So what Britain does is, or other countries, I mean, France did this in Africa as well, is that, you know, they say, well, we'll give you this in exchange for something else. I mean, they did this with oil in Arabia. What they did was actually, so, you know, the Saud king that was put in place by Britain anyway, Britain and America had discovered oil in Eastern Arabia, and they offered to help the Najdi family, ruling elite. They offered to refine that oil, and then they would give them a percentage of their sales. But basically, they were ripping them off. So they you know, they say, oh, we're going to give you all this money, and you know, you're going to be rich. And what happens? This tribe, this family goes, oh yeah, we're going to be enriched by this. Sure, yeah, you deal with the oil, you sell it, you've got the technology, and we'll just kind of collect some of the revenue for allowing you to come in and drill for the oil and process the oil. But what they don't realize is that they're just being paid a fraction of what that oil is worth. And in the meantime, the British and American companies are coming in and minting it, as they say. They're making billions. So they did the same in what was then India as well, is that, you know, they might offer a little bit of support to a local ruler who might be having some problems with, say, local population. And they say, look, we'll give you a little bit of backing. And in exchange, you allow us to do trade, or you allow us to take control of this part of your economy. And so there's a deal done. This is how the West gains control. over different countries is through deals done with local landlords and landowners, and those landowners will go, oh yeah, okay, and so you know, this, so local landowners have to think about their people instead of just thinking about themselves. We have to move out of the feudal era. We're still in the feudal era.
That's true. So, in other words, if I would say, like, we need to, make our own technology. We need our own resources to reach out to our own resources instead of taking help from them. And we have to break this kind of shell in which we are, prison ourselves in terms of like taking help from West and this and that. We have to use our own resources in order to protect our own resources. So there are so many other things we can talk about at the moment. So I think so we are just left with 1 or 2-3 minutes more. So if you want to conclude it, like what kind of massive deception that has happened through East India Company, if you can shed a light a little bit, so we can discuss further in our next session, inshallah. So if we can just give a little bit of list, and then you can conclude it.
Yeah. Inshallah. So according to one report, the British took 2/3 of the subcontinent under direct administration and achieved their economic and political objectives through the East India Company. And this East India Company started trading in 1664. And by the middle of the 18th century, 1757, the British managed to take full control of what was then Bengal. And then after that, we have the famous 1857 uprising for Indian independence, which was crushed by the British. And then, according to one report, the British gave up, it says, the policy of annexation and just established direct rule. So what the British used to do in terms of annexation is when you say, well, we're just going to help you to manage this chunk of land. We'll just kind of cordon this piece of land off, and we're going to run it. But they don't call it colonialism. But after the 1857 uprising, which we need to talk about as well, I think a lot of youth may not know about that. This is when Hindus and Muslims united together against the British, and we need to see more of this today, again coming together to fight off these powers. So it was after 1857 that the British then said, okay, we're not going to pretend that we're helping to manage things anymore. We're just going to rule India directly. That's it, And so that's when they, would be engaging in arrests and shootings and torture and direct punishment to gain control of the land. So the East India Company, like I said, was initially a trading company, but it managed to build up an army. This would be like today, this would be like Amazon building up its own army, or Facebook building up its own army. Yeah.
That's true. Thank you so much, Rebecca. You took time out for us, and it was wonderful discussion we had today. And inshallah, we'll continue on this topic because it's very important and it requires so much attention and it requires so many aspects to discuss. So we just could touch upon a little aspects today. So thank you so much for your time, and inshallah, we'll see you next week for the same topic so that we can dig out more information about colonialism and how it is affecting our future and the present, and how it has affected our past. And because we are supporting an oppressive system, which is economic system, and which is because we are neglect and we are unaware, we need to take real action by educating ourselves and by making such strategies which are going to help us in future, or maybe our future could be saved through those strategies. So I would take a leave on that, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.
Hafiz.
Thank you. I don't know if it's
Leave.
we could, yeah. And do I have to save the recording, or it would be all right? Fatima?